Have you ever stopped to count how many times a day your mind creates scenarios that never happen? How many imaginary conversations have you had today before even leaving the house? How many times have you rehearsed a simple question for the waiter, anticipated judgments no one made, or relived a social interaction from 3 years ago, looking for signs of rejection? The mind with social anxiety doesn't just think. It ruminates. It chews on the same thought until it becomes an obsession that contaminates every present moment. You aren't just nervous before a presentation. You are trapped in an infinite cycle of catastrophic anticipation that steals your vital energy. Carl Jung, the pioneer of depth psychology, discovered something revolutionary about obsessive thoughts. They are not just random symptoms of anxiety. They are manifestations of the unintegrated shadow projected onto future scenarios and distorted memories. Every excessive thought is a desperate attempt by the ego to control the uncontrollable, the perception of others. But here is the truth that most people with social anxiety never discover. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. The difference between being trapped in rumination and being free from it lies in the ability to recognize when your mind is creating imaginary prisons. Think for a moment. How many of your social worries from yesterday came true exactly as you imagined? How many times did you anticipate a rejection that never came? How many conversations did you imagine that were completely different from reality? Your mind is constantly creating horror movies where you are simultaneously the director, the lead actor, and the only person in the audience. Today, you will discover the 9 thought patterns that keep social anxiety running like a well-oiled machine of self-sabotage. These are not just negative thoughts you need to replace with positive thoughts. They are deep psychological mechanisms that reveal how your shadow operates through the ruminating mind. When Jung studied autonomous complexes, he realized that certain parts of the psyche take on a life of their own and begin to influence our thoughts and behaviors independently of our conscious will. Social anxiety creates exactly that. A complex of thoughts that functions like a parallel operating system, always running in the background, always looking for social threats, always anticipating rejection. Every excessive thought you recognize today is an opportunity to reclaim your mental sovereignty. It is a chance to step out of the unconscious identification with the inner critical voice and become the conscious observer of the patterns that govern your social experience. Are you ready to see how your own mind might be working against you? Ready to discover that many of your social problems exist only in the theater of your imagination? Ready to understand that the integration of the shadow happens precisely when we stop running from our own obsessive thoughts? Because what Jung discovered about the nature of compulsive thoughts will completely change the way you understand your social anxiety. And it will show you that freedom has always been closer than you imagine. As you read this, your mind is already doing exactly what we are about to unmask. It's anticipating how you will react to each word, whether you will identify with the examples, if other people feel this too, if you are abnormal for having these thoughts. Stop for a second. Breathe. Do you notice how, even now, at this very moment, your mind is creating layers of thoughts about the thoughts? Do you know this feeling? You're in an elevator, and someone gets in. Immediately, your mind races. Should I say hello? What if they don't respond? What if I seem weird? Better to pretend I'm on my phone. 5 seconds of real interaction, 15 minutes of subsequent mental analysis. Or maybe it's like this. You post something on social media and spend the next hour checking likes, analyzing every comment, interpreting silences, creating theories about who saw it and didn't react. A 30-second post turns into 3 hours of mental rumination. How many times have you canceled plans, not because you were physically sick, but because your mind created so many catastrophic scenarios that your body reacted as if the danger were real? How many times have you avoided a social opportunity because the anticipated thoughts were more intense than the real situation could ever be? Recognize this pattern. You are in a conversation, and instead of being present in the dialogue, your mind is monitoring your own performance. How do I sound? Did I talk too much? Am I not talking enough? Does my voice sound strange? Are they bored? You are not conversing. You are watching yourself converse and judging the performance simultaneously. As you feed these thought cycles, they grow stronger. As you resist them, they persist. As you fight against rumination, you are giving it the very energy it needs to continue existing. The truth is, your mind with social anxiety functions like an overactive security system that identifies threats where they don't exist. Every excessive thought is a false alarm that you have learned to take seriously. Every obsessive analysis is an attempt to control variables that are completely out of your reach. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to navigate social situations so easily? It's not because they don't have thoughts about social interactions. It's because they don't identify with every thought that arises. They don't turn every mental flicker into an existential crisis. Do you want to know the fundamental difference between a free mind and a socially anxious mind? The free mind observes the thoughts. The anxious mind is observed by the thoughts. Today you will discover the 9 types of excessive thoughts that turn your social experience into a psychological minefield. Not to judge them or try to eliminate them, but to recognize them as manifestations of the unintegrated shadow operating through unconscious identification. Each pattern you recognize is a step toward freedom. Because when you see the mechanism at work, you automatically begin to disidentify from it. And it is this disidentification that opens up space for authentic presence to emerge. Why does the mind with social anxiety become a machine for producing obsessive thoughts? The answer lies in the nature of psychological projection that Jung mapped out so brilliantly. When we reject aspects of ourselves that we consider unacceptable, our psyche doesn't simply eliminate them. It projects them onto the external world, especially in social situations where our self-image is at stake. Every excessive thought about others' judgment is, in fact, the echo of our own unrecognized internal judgment. Imagine your mind as an internal courtroom that never adjourns. There is a harsh judge, a ruthless prosecutor, and a weak, insecure defense. This court is constantly in session, analyzing your every gesture, every word, every facial expression. The problem is that you identify with this whole drama, thinking you are simultaneously the defendant, the judge, and the jury. Rumination happens because your psyche is trying to solve an impossible conflict. How to be accepted by everyone all the time without ever showing the aspects of yourself you consider shameful or inadequate. It's like trying to solve a mathematical equation where the variables change every second. Jung discovered that autonomous complexes function exactly like this. They are like computer programs that run independently of your conscious will. The social anxiety complex takes fragments of negative memories, primal fears of rejection, and internalized criticisms, and mixes them into a mental paste that contaminates every future social interaction. Every obsessive thought is an attempt by your shadow to keep you safe through control. The unconscious logic is simple. If I can anticipate all possible forms of rejection, if I analyze every detail of every interaction, if I prepare for all possible scenarios, then I will be protected from the pain of true intimacy. But here is the cruel paradox. The more you try to control your social experience through excessive thinking, the more you disconnect from the authentic presence that truly attracts genuine connections. You are solving the wrong problem with the wrong tool. The ruminating mind believes that thinking a lot about a problem is the same as solving it. It's like trying to drive by looking only in the rearview mirror, or trying to swim against the current using only the strength of your arms. You spend all your mental energy on simulations that never match reality. What your anxious mind doesn't realize is that it is creating the very thing it fears most. When you are completely absorbed in thoughts about how you are being perceived, you are not present in the interaction. And this lack of presence is exactly what people feel as awkward or forced in social interactions. Integration begins when you recognize that you don't need to solve the problem of social approval through compulsive thinking. In fact, it's the opposite. You solve the problem by stopping the attempt to solve it mentally and starting to inhabit it bodily, presently, authentically. The 9 patterns we will explore are the most common manifestations of this mechanism. Recognizing them is the first step to freeing yourself from them. First, excessive thought. Rehearsing conversations that never happen. Your mind creates detailed scripts for social interactions that may or may not occur. You rehearse what you will say when you run into your neighbor, how you will respond if someone asks about your job, what your reaction will be if the waiter makes a joke. You live entire conversations in your head before any word is spoken in reality. This is the mechanism of false preparation. Your psyche believes that by mentally controlling the script, you will avoid real-life embarrassment. But when the actual conversation happens, it never follows the script. And then you feel even more lost, because you invested mental energy in a scenario that didn't materialize. Second, excessive thought. Analyzing every micro-expression for signs of rejection. Someone takes 3 extra seconds to reply to your message, and your mind turns it into a dissertation on why you are being rejected. A smile that lasted half a second less becomes evidence of disapproval. A gaze that didn't meet yours becomes proof that you are insignificant. You have become a hyperactive social threat detector, interpreting neutrality as hostility, silence as judgment, distraction as rejection. Your mind scans every interaction for evidence to confirm your worst fears about yourself. Third, excessive thought. Reviewing past interactions looking for mistakes. 3 days after a conversation, you are still analyzing whether you said the right thing, if you laughed at the right time, if you asked the appropriate question. You re-examine every word spoken like a detective analyzing evidence from a crime that may have never happened. This obsessive review is an attempt to rewrite the past through mental analysis. As if by identifying your mistakes, you could somehow undo the discomfort you felt or ensure it won't happen again in the future. Fourth, excessive thought. Creating catastrophic scenarios about future social events. You've been invited to a party, and your mind immediately produces a high-definition movie where you stand alone in a corner, where no one talks to you, where you say something embarrassing, where everyone notices how uncomfortable you are. The event is still 2 weeks away, but you have already lived through dozens of traumatic versions of it. These catastrophic scenarios function as a distorted form of emotional preparation. Your psyche believes that if you imagine the worst, you will be protected from disappointment. But what really happens is that you arrive at the event already energetically drained by the traumatic imaginary versions you created. Fifth, excessive thought. Constantly monitoring your own social performance. During a conversation, half of your attention is on the conversation, and the other half is on observing how you are doing in the conversation. Am I talking too much? Too little? Do I seem interested? Do I seem bored? Does my voice sound weird? Am I gesturing too much? You are simultaneously the actor and the critic of your own social performance. This division of attention creates the very thing you fear. A fragmented presence, an artificial energy, a feeling that something is off. Because it really is. You are not present in the interaction. You are present in the analysis of the interaction. When your mind is busy monitoring your performance, it cannot genuinely engage with the other person. And this lack of genuine engagement is precisely what makes interactions feel forced or superficial. Sixth, excessive thought. Interpreting silences as negative judgments. When a conversation has a natural pause, your mind immediately fills the silence with narratives about what the other person is really thinking. They think I'm boring. They're looking for an excuse to leave. They've realized I have nothing interesting to say. A 5-second silence becomes a sentence of social inadequacy. You have turned silence, which is a natural and necessary element of human communication, into an existential threat. Your mind cannot tolerate the interpretive void and automatically fills it with your worst projections about yourself. 7th, excessive thought. Obsessively comparing yourself to others in social situations. In any social setting, your mind automatically begins a comparative inventory. They seem more confident. They have more interesting conversations. They laugh more naturally. They belong here in a way I clearly don't. You are not experiencing the social situation. You are measuring your inadequacy against everyone else present. This constant comparison is a manifestation of the inferiority complex that feeds on the illusion that there are people who are naturally social, while you are fundamentally inadequate. You can't see that other people also feel insecurities. You can only see their external performances compared to your internal struggles. 8th, excessive thought. Anticipating rejections that never materialize. Before you even send a message, make an invitation, or express an opinion, your mind is already living the rejection. They'll think it's weird. They'll ignore me. They'll think I'm pathetic. You experience the pain of anticipated rejection so many times that you often don't even attempt the real interaction. This mechanism is particularly cruel because it robs you of the possibility of genuine connections. You are projectively rejecting yourself to avoid the pain of a rejection that might not even exist. It's like refusing to play the game because you've already decided you're going to lose. 9th, excessive thought. Creating elaborate theories about why people act a certain way. Someone doesn't return your call the same day, and your mind constructs a complex theory about the reasons. They must be avoiding talking to me because I said something wrong in our last conversation, or because they noticed something about my personality they didn't like, or because others have spoken ill of me. A simple explanation like, "they were busy," is never considered. You have become a social interaction conspiracy theorist, always searching for complicated and self-referential explanations for behaviors that likely have motivations completely unrelated to you. Your mind cannot accept that not everything that happens around you is about you. These 9 patterns reveal a fundamental truth. Your social anxiety is not about other people. It's about the relationship you have with your own thoughts. Every obsessive rumination is an attempt to solve the problem of self-acceptance by mentally controlling the perception of others. But here is what Jung discovered. What you resist persists. The more you fight against these thoughts, the more energy you give them. Integration comes not from elimination, but from conscious, disidentified observation. Now that you have recognized the 9 patterns of excessive thought, it is time for practical integration. We are not going to try to eliminate these thoughts. That is impossible and counterproductive. We are going to learn to relate to them in a completely different way. The work of integrating the mental shadow begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. When an obsessive thought arises, instead of identifying with it or fighting against it, you can simply name it and observe it with scientific curiosity. Practice disidentified recognition. When you notice you are rehearsing a conversation that may never happen, say mentally, "I observe my mind creating imaginary scripts." When you catch yourself analyzing micro-expressions, "I observe that I am looking for signs of rejection where they may not exist." This simple act of naming creates space between you and the thought. The conscious observer technique is revolutionary because it interrupts automatic identification. Instead of I am thinking obsessively about this interaction, it becomes, I observe my mind thinking obsessively about this interaction. It seems like a subtle difference, but it is transformative. Develop bodily presence as an antidote to mental rumination. When you find yourself lost in social analysis, bring your attention to physical sensations. Your feet on the floor, your breath in your chest, your hands relaxed. The ruminating mind lives in time, past and future. The body always lives in the present. Using the body as an anchor automatically dissolves mental obsession. Practice radical acceptance of thoughts. Instead of judging your obsessive patterns as bad or wrong, recognize them as strategies your psyche developed to try to protect you. Thank your mind for its intention, even if the method is ineffective. Thank you for trying to protect me from rejection, but I don't need that kind of protection right now. Implement reality testing. When you catch yourself creating catastrophic scenarios or interpreting signs of rejection, ask yourself, is this a verifiable fact or an interpretation from my anxiety? How many times has this imagined catastrophe actually happened? Are there other possible explanations for this behavior? Use the conscious redirection technique. When you notice you are monitoring your social performance during a conversation, consciously redirect your attention to the person you are talking to. Instead of, how am I doing? Ask yourself, what is this person really communicating? How can I be more present for them? Develop the practice of purposeful imperfection. Deliberately let a conversation end in silence without filling it. Purposefully tell a story without the perfect ending. Intentionally allow yourself to stutter or lose your train of thought. This practice desensitizes your nervous system to imperfection and dissolves the pressure to perform. Integration happens gradually. Every time you observe an obsessive pattern without identifying with it, you are expanding your awareness. Every moment you choose presence over analysis, you are strengthening your authenticity. Remember, the goal is not to have a completely silent mind. It is to have a conscious relationship with your thoughts. It is to recognize that you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. It is to discover that your true identity lies in the conscious observer, not in the mental content it observes. Social freedom is born from this fundamental disidentification. You have made it this far, and that means something fundamental has changed. You now know the 9 patterns of excessive thought that govern social anxiety. More importantly, you have discovered that you do not have to be a slave to them. Each pattern you have recognized is a portal to liberation. When you see the mechanism at work, you automatically begin to disidentify from it. When you understand that your obsessive thoughts are projections of the unintegrated shadow, you gain the power of choice over how to react to them. You are no longer the unconscious victim of your own mental patterns. You are the conscious observer who can choose which inner voice to pay attention to. You are the presence that exists before thoughts arise and remains after they pass. From now on, every time your mind starts rehearsing imaginary conversations, you will recognize, there's pattern number 1 at work. When you catch yourself analyzing micro-expressions, you will smile inwardly. Hello, pattern number 2. When you start creating future social catastrophes, welcome, familiar patterns. I see you, but I'm not getting on that ride. This is the alchemy of consciousness, transforming identification into observation, resistance into acceptance, struggle into understanding. Every obsessive thought is now a reminder to return to presence, not a mental prison that holds you captive. Remember, social anxiety is not a personality defect. It is a psychological complex that can be integrated through awareness. You do not need to completely eliminate these patterns to be free. You just need to stop identifying with them as if they were your true identity. Your journey of integration is just beginning. Every social interaction is now an opportunity to practice conscious presence. Every moment of anxiety is an invitation to observe the patterns without being governed by them. Every obsessive thought is a chance to choose authenticity over performance. You are now the guardian of your own mental experience. You do not need external approval to validate your existence. You do not need perfect performances to deserve connection. You do not need mental control to navigate the social world. You are the authentic presence that needs to prove nothing to anyone. You are the consciousness that observes thoughts without being defined by them. You are the courage to be imperfect in a world that demands masks. If this script resonated with your experience, comment which of the 9 patterns impacted you the most, like if you felt the courage to look at your own mental mechanisms. Subscribe to continue this journey of integration and discovery. The social freedom you seek is not on the other side of eliminating anxiety. It is on the other side of identifying with it. Allow yourself to be who you really are. The world needs your authentic presence, not your perfect performance. The journey of integration continues with every conscious breath.